and welcome to This Week in Atheism, a panel discussion brought to you by the Center for Atheism, and taken panel discussion based on articles mostly drawn from The Focus, which is a newsletter put out by the Center for Atheism. If you want to know how to get the newsletter, just wait for the information to show up on the crawl on your screen. My name is Dennis Horvitz. I'm the host, and I want to introduce my panelists. On my right is Honey, on my left is Tiffany. And we're going to discuss Camp Quest, which, if you haven't heard about it, is a camp that was started by Edwin Kagan, who is affiliated with American Atheists and is the legal director. It's a summer camp that usually lasts only 2 weeks. It's for children actually of all religious backgrounds or no religious backgrounds. The emphasis is on subjects such as evolution, the teaching of rational inquiry. What is not present there is any kind of religious indoctrination. Most of the camp activities of the camp, of course, just like any other camp. There are camps in Florida, which I think just started this year, camps in Michigan, Ohio, where else? California. I would like to focus on the one that has just opened up this year and probably is ongoing even as we tape right now in England, just outside of London, and started by Samantha Stein. Samantha has been a guest on one of our other shows. We have interviewed her on New York City Atheists Live on Tape. She had experience at a camp where she, I guess, went to as a child and heard about Camp Quest in the United States. Last year was a counselor for a couple of weeks at the camp in Michigan, and was inspired to start her own chapter, basically, in London, in Somerset, right outside of London. One of the things that I want to mention and want to stress is that, from what I understand, when it opened up, there was a certain amount of, if not negative publicity, I would say it was kind of dismissive publicity. They referred to Samantha, who is a lovely girl. They emphasized that she had mousy hair, and were kind of generally dismissive of her, being an atheist or the idea of an atheist camp, which I find very strange because in England, I would say almost half of British are atheists themselves, or agnostics, would you say? So I think it's just certain English tabloids that basically put her and Camp Quest down. The famous author and professor Richard Dawkins donated a certain amount of money, I guess a comparatively small amount of money, to Camp Quest, and apparently has sponsored a couple of campers, but the English press referred to it as Camp Dawkins. Richard Dawkins, as far to the best of my knowledge, has nothing to do with the day-to-day running of the camp. That is all Samantha and her people, and has nothing to do with other than being a supporter, has nothing to do with the camp philosophy. But I know you said that you have a son.
I do.
And you'd like
I do. I'm actually a single mother, and I really like the idea of this camp because, it's the summer. I have to worry about where I'm going to send my son while I'm working, and I wish that there was a camp like this in New York because I read all about it, and they're teaching the Big Bang, they're teaching sciences, and then they're also doing other fun camp stuff. And I think that's great. There are lots of other summer camps that you can choose from. You can choose from a camp that has no religious affiliation, like my son's in baseball camp.
Right.
Or there are a lot of religious camps, like the Jesus camp, where children go to that. Why can't we have our own? We have our own now. We have an atheist camp, or like a science-based camp. And when children go away to camp, they're impressionable. They always take on something from the camp, like a belief system. Like I sent my son to baseball camp, and I'm a Yankee fan, and I didn't realize that the camp he went to was a Mets baseball camp.
Uh-oh, sacrilege.
And, you know, now he's wearing a Mets cap now, you know, so, yeah, which I'm not happy about. But, you know, a camp like this, they're actually, you know, they're not forcing any beliefs on them. They're just, you know, they're teaching them about sciences and stuff like that, and I really like that.
And,
I wish I could send him to something where no one's pushing, you know, some agenda, and he's just learning about stuff that I would be teaching him if, you know.
Right, but the thing about Camp Quest is that they're learning, it says, you know, they're instead of singing spirituals or sharing prayers in the manner traditionally favored by established youth groups, such as the Boy Scouts, or in the case of England, they have apparently a group called the Guides. Camp Questers learn about evolution, but it's not this cold, cut and dried indoctrination kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's like they have fun like kids at camp. It's sports and swimming and all the stuff that you would want at a camp.
I read somewhere that the camp, one of the initial ways that the camp got started was there was a boy and he was atheist and he wanted to join the Boy Scouts. And the Boy Scouts have become kind of religious affiliated, and they wouldn't let him in.
Well, actually, the Boy Scouts have always been somewhat. I mean, and that's been part of their doctrine, is that their policy is that you believe in God. I mean, that you can't be gay and you can't be an atheist.
When I was a Girl Scout, because Girl Scouts are the same thing, we met at the basement of Our Lady of Grace. This is in Brooklyn, and we would march through march down the aisle for the Sunday Mass. And I was the only non-Catholic Girl Scout. My family is originally Jewish, if you go far back enough, but my mother's atheist, my grandfather's atheist. So I would just lie and say I was Jewish because that was less evil than being an atheist.
Right.
My mother had to teach me to lie and say this just so I wouldn't be ostracized and thrown out, which is sad because all I want to do is learn how to bake brownies and get merit badges.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, the whole scouting. I don't know. I don't know that when the scouting movement started, that. And again, could be just my ignorance because I haven't read about it for a long time. But it was started in England actually by Baden-Powell, I believe. And I think belief in God was part of it, but I don't remember that it was such a heavy influence on, emphasis on religion. I could be wrong, but I know that it certainly the United States being one of the most religious countries, if not the most religious country in the Western world, emphasized belief in God and religion. And I when I was growing up, there were two Boy Scout groups that I know of that were sponsored by synagogues. There were many, many more that were sponsored by churches. If there were any Boy Scout groups or Girl Scout groups that were sponsored by secular organizations, I can't recall. I don't know. Does anybody know? I suppose it's possible, but the whole idea was, they lost their federal funding because they were discriminated against gays and against atheists. I'm sorry?
They really haven't lost it.
You're saying they haven't lost it?
No. But the National Jamboree is usually on some type of military reservation or base, and that's given to them by the federal government free of charge.
Right.
And every year we try to stop that, and the Congress goes for it.
But also one of the appeals and why the religious organizations love the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, in addition to brainwashing and indoctrinating children to like Mets versus Yankees or religion versus non-religion. I love that example. I'm sorry. I thought that was great.
I'm still upset about it.
Talk about religious warfare.
A lot of people who are agnostic or borderline or even atheist to some extent, or may even be atheists, go to churches is because of the sense of community that they feel they have. Well, this is the early foundation for people who are atheists trying to bring that sense of community, something to bring their children to, their families to, TV shows that they could watch, groups that they can go to that you can find online to meet up with people in your city, to have that sense of community with people who agree with what you agree with.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's a real challenge, at least, for me, it's trying to bring my son up that way, we go to like the planetarium a lot and stuff like that. So I wish I'd known about this camp's existence. I would have put them in it this summer, you know,
Right.
because I was trying to figure out what to do with them.
Right.
You know, and when you have a child and they're at a summer camp all day long, you know, for a long period of time, like whatever is around going on at that camp, that is going to be an influence to them. And I'm really glad that they have something like a camp like this, because they're not actually like forcing any belief systems on it. It's
Right,
just,
it's not like an atheist Jesus camp. in
right.
other
No,
words.
it's not. And I really liked, you know, that aspect of it.
The more money we spend, you know, atheists spend so much money on legal fees. Thank goodness for groups like the ACLU that help us out, that have bigger wallets, but it's still very exhausting for atheists to fight the legal battles that we have, that it takes away from other things we can do to congregate and perpetuate our understandings and our beliefs among ourselves, or get more people out of the woodwork. Religious groups have bottomless pockets, so it seems. Catholic Church had to pay all that money after all the scandals with the priests, and they still seem to have quite a bit of money to have their organizations, their things that they fund, that they sponsor. And if we can, you know, reach out more, you know, with kids, our own children, our own families, bringing our friends more into these groups and discussion groups and getting them behind things like this, getting more exposures like on buses and wherever, we can grow the understanding and the acceptance rather than just fight the legal the battles with camps.
One of the things I read too was they're teaching philosophy, and they're teaching ethics.
Yes.
Okay, so a lot of people, when they think about atheism or they contemplate that and they think about what it's going to be like for their children, you know, in an envisioned future, like you would have ethic classes for you know, children, and you would teach them ethics, you know, and they don't have to include unicorns, you know.
Well,
They don't have to
that's
include imaginary things, and it's just regular ethics, you know, on what is right and wrong.
right. But that's a very good thing you mentioned the unicorn challenge, because in addition to ethics and evolution, they do teach people, they do teach kids rational inquiry and how to, you know, how and about things such as logical conclusions and proof and making an argument. And the unicorn challenge, which was started in the United States, is basically this. I hope I get this exactly right. The staff of Camp Quest maintain that there are invisible unicorns, and you can't detect them in any way, but their challenge to the campers is that they have to come up with arguments proving the unicorns do not exist. And there's I think in the United States, I think there's a $100 reward for anyone who can logically prove that invisible unicorns do not exist. And Samantha has said that in England they're doing the same thing. And it's interesting because these kids come up with really wild stuff, and it fosters creative thinking, you know.
And then to make it parallel religion more, it's actually, I think, Dawkins offered a 10 British pound reward for whoever can prove it does not exist. And the only proof that it does exist is that there's a really old book that
Right,
says it
the
does,
ancient book.
just like the Bible says
like
it
the Bible,
does.
right.
So I love that.
I just want to read you from this article from the Guardian in England about Camp Quest, and it's a quote this 12-year-old girl named Julia, and she says, "I'm an atheist. I believe in the Big Bang and stuff. I don't believe in God. I don't sing hymns and I don't pray. I'm the only non-Christian in my class at school, and sometimes that can cause a problem. Some people think I'm a bit weird." And of course we can't reproduce it here, but on an audio clip on the online version, she says, "I don't care." So, which I thought was kind of cute. And just more from the article, it says that the idea behind the camp is to give a quote-unquote godless alternative to traditional religious summer camps. In the morning, the participants discuss philosophical ideas and learn about subjects such as astronomy. Then in the afternoon, they take part in more traditional camp activities. They swim, they run, they climb, they row. In the evening, if the rain relents, they sit around the campfire and toast marshmallows. But you mentioned earlier, just a few minutes ago, movie The Jesus Camp,
Oh, yeah.
which you found to be quite frightening.
Yeah.
Not that I blame you. I mean,
I thought it was.
if you haven't
I thought
seen
it
it,
was ridiculous. Like these, like really evangelical kids, and they're speaking in tongues and passing out and fainting from the camp, and they're on the street trying to convert other people, like just anyone walking by, like.
Ooh.
and in a bowling alley too. There was
Yeah,
one,
no, you know what? I would want my kids to do that. One of the things about this camp that I really like is when I'm trying to, my son will ask me questions about God, and
How old is your son, by the way?
He's 9.
9.
And he knows that I'm atheist, that I don't believe in God, and I believe in science and stuff like that, and that's how we came to be. So, like, he visited his father, and his aunt or something, he actually went to Bible school, and then I spoke to him on the phone, and he's like, oh, I went to Bible school, and I learned how to pray. And I was like, well, you know that I don't like that, and that's not what I believe. But it's very hard with a child, like, because
Right.
you don't really want to, tell them, oh, you should just believe what I believe. You want them to
Right.
free think. And for me, he's only hearing about this, there's no such thing as God, from me. Okay, so if everyone else that I know is not atheist, he's like, Mom's the only one who thinks that, but a place like this, there's all these other
Right,
people there,
right.
and other children too, and they also believe that. So, like, I really wish, I want to send him next year.
If you
He can
teach
go to
him-
the camp.
Do you have him teach him how to question and how to, question everything that he sees? Maybe not directly to that person, because he doesn't want to start a fight if he's the only one like that. When you're 9 years old, you don't want to be the only one to speak up.
Right.
Unless you're with your mom.
Right.
But I mean, have you taught him to question in the back of his mind, why do they believe this? Where's the proof? Or
I mean, I've done some stuff. Like, I don't really want to push my beliefs onto him. I try and kind of leave it open, and I kind of say, you know what, religion isn't really something for a little boy to totally figure out just yet,
Right.
We're going to talk about it, and you're going to make up your own mind when you're an adult, hopefully.
Right.
See,
Yeah.
I don't want to do. When I was little, I wasn't given that choice that there's religion or there's atheism. It was explained to me that religion was something that made people feel better, but it wasn't something that really existed. Kind of like when you had, it was a little
The great
crutch.
placebo.
My mother explained it as almost like a placebo that made society behave. Kind of like how my mother said how Santa Claus made made people's kids behave for a month or two before Christmas to get some good behavior. Well, religion makes society try to behave. It forces society to have a conscience in fear that they won't have a conscience, that there are ultimate consequences.
I like to think of religion as a mass Stockholm syndrome. The sheep are in love with their imaginary wolf. They've fallen in love with their imaginary mega terrorist.
Yeah, so I struggle with this. When I went to their website, I saw they were promoting a book, and it's called Parenting Beyond Belief. And I read that on my lunch break at work. I went to Borders, ordered it because I didn't have a copy, because I need help with
Right,
this
right.
issue. Like, I'm not sure what to do, and he gets other influences, and I'm not really sure to handle it. So I'm
Right.
looking forward to that book. Hopefully that'll help me.
And also, I mean, I know it's complicated for you because your son's father is religious or believes in
he's
a
not.
religion.
An aunt just took him.
Oh,
He's not very
okay.
religious, so I'm happy.
Because a lot of people ask me, people who, I have friends who are Catholic, who ask me, how would you raise, I don't have kids yet, but when I do have kids, a lot of people ask me, how would you raise your children? And I answer, well, how are you going to raise yours? And they answer Catholic. I'm like, well, I would raise mine when I have them as atheist. You would raise yours in what you believe and how you were brought up. Well, that's how I would raise mine. It's this whole big, well, what do you do about the children? Well, what do you do about yours?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I haven't, none of my children can find me, which is, no, I have no, to the best of my knowledge, I have no children. I haven't been confronted with those kinds of problems, but I think what Camp Quest does is that, like as you alluded to before, and is that you seem to be the main adult authority figure in your son's life who does not believe, but under this in this environment, not only would your son be exposed to other children who don't have a religious background or are not influenced by it, but also the authority figures aren't caught up in belief, and they're not they're not trying to force anything on him.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
they're dealing with things that are going to help him deal with reality in the day-to-day life, knowing about science, knowing about rational inquiry, and you know, you don't have to force an atheist point of view on children. Just the lack of a religious point of view is probably very beneficial.
You know what we do? We study a lot of science together. We watched a lot of documentaries.
Yes.
We watched The Tree of Life. We watched documentaries all about Darwin. And actually, the Tree of Life documentary, it was like a documentary hosted by the BBC, and they had a big poster that is the Tree of Life, and it shows all the species connected together. And they were giving it out for free, but only in England and Ireland.
Wow.
But I wrote to them and I said, listen, this poster really helped, you know, for me to
Right.
explain this stuff to my son. Could you please send one to me? And they said, if we have any left after England and Ireland, we'll send one to you. And they did. I have
Oh,
it.
great.
I got it. It's
Great.
you know, it's in my
Great.
apartment. And so we do science stuff, and also like at the Museum of Natural History, like they just redid, Whoopi Goldberg did, you know, her show about the Big Bang. So I'm taking him there as soon as possible.
I've
try
gotta
and
see
like
that.
reverse, you know, the Bible class that he went to. We're going to go to the Big Bang. And because it says very clearly, like, we are here because of this Big Bang. Like, we were, you know, from these stars. That's how it, you know. So I can't wait for him to listen to that. Just so we can think about that.
I think the important thing also too, like I think about it a lot because a lot of my friends have children or are starting to have children, and I start thinking about, you know, how they explain things to their children because they practice a religion and believe that there is a God. And I think about, you know, it's important also to reinforce to a kid, especially if you want to raise them in your atheist belief, and
Disbelief.
it's the way all these words and phrases even get ingrained in our vocabulary.
Yeah,
to begin with,
that's a
it's hard.
subject for a whole other show.
The whole
sure.
other show.
Right.
But they, you know, to when it's so easy when you believe that there is a God, when something bad happens, like someone dies, they're up with God now and they're where they should belong. God wanted them and took them early. It's so easy to explain when something bad happens, or so as it makes it more challenging, but you also build inner strength. And that was pointed out to me as a child. You're building inner strength. If you can get through this, you can get through the worst things that will happen later in life. This is training, and rather than invoking some higher power.
Right.
And that was hard.
Well, it's just a lot. It's a lot easier to take painful events if you feel that there's some kind of larger purpose, even if you don't know what that purpose is,
Right.
or who, or what's, you know, if you know, you lose a loved one, if you have that sense that sooner or later you're going to meet them again, and that wherever they are, they're happy. But you know, and again, I don't want to go down any kind of psychological path, but part of that whole feeding children that kind of stuff is basically because you're affected by that child's pain. And by making the child feel better, you're kind of, you know, protecting yourself from, you know, from somebody else's pain. So it's kind of like you're kind of trying to people who do that are trying to anesthetize both of them at one time. You know, it seems to me. But you know, if you haven't seen the movie Jesus Camp, and not that I want them to make any money, but it is a genuine horror movie. I saw it with New York City Atheists, you know, 2 or 3 years ago when it came out, and my merely describing it to you won't even get you there in terms of the shock value, the horror value. I'm sure that as a mother, to sit there and see 5, 6, 7, 12-year-olds writhing on the floor in existential angst, worrying about their souls. I mean, for children to be worrying about things
Yeah,
like
no,
that. And of course, there was the obligatory passing out of plastic fetuses, because of course abortion is well, I mean, that was so obvious. It was like that. I would have almost been disappointed if they hadn't. But they had kids worshiping a cardboard cutout of George Bush. And of course, there was the insipid and wrongful denial of evolution. But I don't know. I recommend that you see it, but I can't guarantee you want to be able to sit through all of it. I mean, it's really that bad. And that's why I think that Camp Quests and what Edwin Kagan has done, and certainly our support goes out to Samantha Stein in England. What they're doing is a badly needed, refreshing alternative to Jesus Camp. But and actually, I mean, I'm sure most religious camps aren't as extreme as the one depicted in the movie Jesus Camp. But let's face it, if they're enforcing or encouraging a religious view about the natural world, clearly that's giving people the wrong idea. That's indoctrinating children with the wrong idea. Maybe some people do it poetically or figuratively or as an essence. I can't pretend to know what's going on. But if somebody's telling you that we're all here because God went poof, that's clearly not what the evidence shows.
If there was any question, when Dawkins said that religion is child abuse, Jesus Camp is just evidence for that. But the Quest Camp, I wish I could go to the camp. Like, I really do. I want to go to the camp with my son and just, do all that fun stuff. It sounds really great.
And it might, we're running out of time, but, it might not be a bad idea for a kind of Camp Quest for adults just to have, for people who have children, just to have questions about how to...
Take a 1-week vacation as a counselor and volunteer, and then put your son in the camp and be his camp. I don't know if you'd like that.
I wish. I don't know that I'd be able to do that, but yeah, that'd be awesome.
Right. In any case, we're running out of time. Honey and Tiffany, thank you for joining me again. You have been watching This Week in Atheism, which is a panel discussion brought to you by the Center for Atheism. I have been your host, Dennis Horvitz. Please join us again next week. Thanks for watching.